With new car prices skyrocketing and petrol prices always going up, have hybrids suddenly become even better value compared to petrol and diesel alternatives? We've grabbed the new generation Hyundai Santa Fe Hybrid to see if it's a good car and to answer that very question. Over the next 5 minutes, while you're watching my evil twin road test the car, I will be back here doing the hard work, researching insurance costs, servicing costs, fuel costs, and finding out for real if the Santa Fe Hybrid is cheaper to own. And if it is, how many years you would need to own it till you recoup that additional purchase price. So why don't you go off and watch my less handsome twin doing the easy work and come back to me in about 5 minutes when I should have all of these numbers filled out and we will have the answer. Now Hyundai offers the Santa Fe in 4 spec levels, but the hybrid is only on the Elite and the top spec Highlander. This one is the Elite, so it's $63,000 plus on roads, which works out to about $68,000 or so on road in Sydney or Melbourne, but check your local pricing because it may differ. Externally, there are not many differences to pick. In fact, the only one, apart from the obligatory hybrid badging, is that the hybrid gets smaller 19-inch wheels and tyres compared to the 20s on the Elite petrol and diesel. All right, you can see compared to me, this is a big car, but compared to the class benchmark Toyota Kluger, not so much. It's about 180 millimeters shorter in overall length, 30 millimeters narrower in width, and 70 mil narrower in height. And we'll see how that pays off or not inside. But for now, why don't we start at the back? Okay, with large family SUVs, it's all about the space inside, right? So let's take a closer look. And yes, I am going to start at the back and we'll work our way forward. Electric tailgate, nice to have. Only 130 litres of space when you're in 7-seat configuration. So as you can see, it's probably big enough for 3 or 4 backpacks, but that's about it. If you need to increase the space, the back row folds down very easily, and you're left with 581 litres of space, which is actually quite competitive for this segment. But again, if you need to go further, and this is a handy little feature on this car, you can fold the second row at the touch of a button. Because this is a 7-seater, there's no spare tyre under the floor here, but it is a full-size spare carried underneath the car. Under this panel here, we have a sort of a wet area, but as you can see, it's full of tools right now. You can take those out, leave them at home, and then you've got room for your kids' soccer boots after practice. There are a couple of tie downs over here. We've got a couple more over here. And I should also point out, there is a cargo cover for when you're in 5-seat mode, so you can cover up whatever's in your boot. But to demonstrate the interior space, we've taken that out. And if you tend to use the space, you'll have to leave that at home too. All right, enough there. We'll jump into the third row and see how much room we've got there for kids. Okay, so now the test of what separates a full-time 7-seater from a part-time 7-seater. And that's how big can you be and fit comfortably in the third row. But it all starts with how easy is it to get into the third row. And this is where the Santa Fe has one trick up its sleeve. It has a one-touch button which moves the seat forward and gets me started. Okay, so getting in isn't all that elegant, but I am in. In terms of headroom, my head is just rubbing up against the roofline, and I'm not the tallest bloke in the world, 5'8", 5'9" on a good day. Legroom, let's find out. I'll pull this seat back towards me and use the button here to recline so that people in the middle row have some comfort. And that's actually pretty decent for me. There is very little under-seat foot room, but I have got okay knee room. I think you can see here that there is 0 thigh support for me. But more tellingly is we've got this seat as far forward as it will lock, which means the middle row right now don't have a lot of leg room. If we're being honest, it probably needs to come back to there. And then you can see my knee is rubbing right up against it. So it is quite cramped for adults back here. Kids, probably up to the age of about 13 or 14, would be okay in here. But another issue worth pointing out for them, this little porthole window is quite high up and quite small. So it does have a little bit of a claustrophobia feeling, and any adult knows that on a long car trip, that can result in a bit of motion sickness. So keep that in mind. Other comfort features back here, we've got, as you can see, air vents, and I do actually have rear seat air vent controls to control the fan, which is a nice touch. I also on that side have a USB port. So I guess the kid sitting there is the one you love more, because the kid sitting here, he's just got a cup holder and that's about it. Okay. All right, so here we are in the second row, and as you can see, getting in is actually quite easy. Nice wide door opening, and it's an easy step up into what is actually a fairly spacious second row. This is my driving position. This is with the second row seat all the way back. There is a slide function, and I'll show you that. So if you've got big kids in the back, you can bring it all the way up to here. And as you can see, it's starting to get a little bit tight for me, but I'd be okay in this position for short trips. I'm going to push it all the way back now. Okay, so space and flexibility, that's what it's all about, but you also want a lot of comfort back here, and Hyundai has put a couple of nice touches in here which I'm really impressed with. Obviously, we've got air vents, keep the airflow going. We've got a couple of USB chargers so you don't have to choose your favorite child, and a nice touch, a sun blind for keeping the sun off sleeping Junior and keep him asleep as long as possible into the road trip. One other convenience feature is we've got some seat controls here on the passenger front seat. So that means you can actually slide the front seat further forward to give your bigger Juniors even more space in the back. Of course, we don't have those controls on the driver's seats because nobody should mess with mummy or daddy while they're driving. Okay, we've made it to the front row, the adult zone in the Hyundai Santa Fe, and you can see it's a really classy cabin. Leather is definitely the material du jour up the front. It's on the seats, nicely sculpted seats. It's also across the dashboard. Second thing that strikes you on first impression is the number of buttons. Now, there is a real trend in recent years towards centralizing all the controls in this touchscreen up here on other car manufacturers, but Hyundai with the Santa Fe has kept a lot of these buttons close at hand. Actually, I'd like your thoughts on that. What's your preference? Do you like buttons, or do you like having everything controlled through the touchscreen? Let me know in the comments below and let's discuss that further. For me, I actually like the buttons. All right, what else have we got up here? Well, obviously we've got digital radio, satellite navigation, wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, not wireless. And I've had a couple of glitches with the Android Auto. A couple of times it's actually kicked me off the system with my phone plugged in. And one time I noticed on an hour-long drive, the clock in here never actually updated, but the maps did. So clearly it was working, but it just decided I didn't need to know the right time. Kind of weird, but there you go. Maybe that's just my phone. Speaking of which, we've got a wireless charging mat, but it's actually not a mat. Look at this. I've got my phone here. Slide it down into here and it keeps your phone secure while charging. I really like that. Storage is the other big story up the front. We've obviously got a glove box here with a shelf just above it. You can see that we've got a very large storage bin under here. I've got 2 cup holders in here and of course the obligatory underarm storage there, plus bottle holders in the door that take a proper size bottle. All in all, a good place to live, which really leaves us with just one thing to do, and that's go for a drive. So why don't we? Sorry to digress, but my boss is really onto me to help get subscribers up on our YouTube channel. So if you've liked this video, do me a solid and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to get notified when we drive new cars, hit the notification as well. Now, back to the review. Okay, now that we're on the move, let's talk about engines. You might be familiar with the Santa Fe petrol's 3.5 litre V6 or the diesel's 2.2 litre turbo. The hybrid has a small 1.6 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, but it is assisted by a small electric motor, so you get combined outputs of 169 kilowatts and 350 newton meters. Now that's less power than the petrol, which has 200 kilowatts, but more torque because it only has 331. Compared to the diesel, we've got more power. It only has 148 kilowatts, but it has more torque, 440 newton meters. The other big difference is that those two cars get an 8-speed automatic. For reasons known to Hyundai, this car makes do with a 6-speed automatic. That said, it is a really nice powertrain to drive. There are no hiccups, no qualms. It has decent performance when you put your boot in. It's also relatively quiet when you're on the move. Initially, it starts off in electric mode if it can, and it uses that when you're at low speeds, car parks, crawling in traffic, whatnot. The petrol engine will kick in and join the fun when it needs to. And yes, you will notice it because you can hear it, but in terms of smoothness, it is a really seamless assistance. It's actually a really nice powertrain to drive, and it's proving quite economical. Hyundai claims it'll do 6 litres per 100 on the combined cycle. I'm seeing about 6.7 of the 400 that we've covered so far. But to be fair, a lot of that is highway, and as we all know, hybrids tend to do their best work around town when there's a lot more stop and go for them to harvest the energy. But still, for me, it's a tick in that box. The hybrid makes sense as a powertrain. Now, like most all-wheel drive SUVs these days, the Santa Fe has a number of driving modes, both tarmac and off-road. For tarmac, you've got Eco and Sport. Sport sharpens up its engine responses and transmission response. For off-road, we've got snow, dirt, and mud. But always bear in mind that this is a light to medium duty off-roader. If serious off-roading is what you do, then you're much better off looking at, say, the Ford Everest or the Toyota Prado. But they're going to be more expensive, so you really do need to decide if that's something that's important to you. Another area where the hybrid is not as strong as the petrol or diesel is in towing. Santa Fe petrol and diesel are rated to tow up to 2.5 tonnes. For better or worse, this hybrid is only rated up to 1,650 kilos. So if that's important to you, keep that in mind. Now let's talk about active safety. The Santa Fe, like a lot of Hyundai's modern product, has a really strong safety suite. Lane keeping assist, active cruise control, importantly with stop and go, so it works in peak hour traffic, but it does have its limitations. The stop and go will actually stop working if your car is stopped for more than 3 seconds. If you want to go again, you've then got to press the accelerator or flick the cruise control switch and it'll come back online. It works pretty well. A couple of times, particularly in my morning commute, I've been a bit worried that it's not going to pull up fast enough, but it does the job. One area I have found it deficient: autonomous emergency braking. I'll give you one example. I was driving on the freeway, moved out to the right-hand lane, overtook the car in front, moved back into the left-hand lane, and as I was doing so, it slammed on the brakes. Scared the living crap out of me, and I'm pretty sure it scared the living crap out of the car I'd just overtaken. Luckily, it only lasted for a second or so before drive was restored, and I haven't been able to replicate that glitch. But to me, it does prove that these autonomous safety systems are there to assist, not to take over, and you just need to be aware. There are a couple of features that this car does not have. It has blind spot monitoring, but it doesn't give you a blind spot camera, so you can't see what's in your blind spot. It also doesn't have 360-degree surround view cameras, which can make it a little bit less easy when you're parking or maneuvering in tight spaces. Both of those systems are on the Highlander, but that's a $5,000 dearer car. Still, if that's important to you, you might need to find the extra cash. Overall, I'm really liking the Hyundai Santa Fe Hybrid. I'm actually really in tune with its ride quality as well. I've driven the Kia Sorento Hybrid, and I've found that Kia's focus on sportiness and dynamism comes at a cost to the ride. It's a firmer ride, it's a busier ride. I'm a bit more relaxed, and I like the Santa Fe's more luxury-focused ride. It does give it a little bit of a handicap when it comes to dynamics. The car's not as sharp, but it's a large family SUV, right? It's not a car that you take for Sunday morning strops up your favourite mountain road. Or am I wrong? Do you prefer the Sorento? Would you prefer a car with a firmer ride, more sporty ride? Let me know in the comments. If you agree with me and you like the Santa Fe, you're more relaxed, why don't you hit a like on this video and we'll get a movement going to make all cars plush. Overall, I really like the Santa Fe's tune, both in terms of its powertrain and its suspension. It's a comfortable car, it's an easy car to drive. It's not the last word in dynamism, it's not going to make every drive fun, but it is going to take stress out of everyday driving. And we all know that families have enough stress in their lives without adding to it. So I really feel like Hyundai's nailed the sweet spot with what this car needs to be. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments below and let's take that discussion on. there you have it. The Hyundai Santa Fe is an impressive offering in the large SUV hybrid segment. It's not a strong segment at the moment, but it's a competitive car nonetheless. It's a nice car to drive, comfortable on the road and competent, well spec'd inside, a good safety suite, albeit with a couple of emissions that might force you to step up, and plenty of space inside. Again, with the caveat that that third row is an occasional row. A good car overall. Now there was something else I was meant to tell you, something I promised you at the start. What was it? Welcome back. Right, the research is done and let's take a look at the findings. First off, the Elite Hybrid is actually $6,500 dearer to buy than the petrol, but bear in mind with the petrol you don't get all-wheel drive, and it is also about $3,000 dearer to buy than the diesel. So the question is, do you make those costs back in the long run? Let's find out. Fuel costs. We've taken Hyundai's claims. 6 litres per 100 for the hybrid, 10.5 for the petrol, and 6.1 for the diesel. These prices here are how much money you will pay over a year. So you can see that the hybrid is a lot cheaper to run over a year than its petrol equivalent, but not much cheaper to run than the diesel. Now, what about servicing costs? Here, the hybrid has an advantage. $2,295 is $200 cheaper than its two siblings. But bear in mind, you have to service the hybrid every 10,000 kilometers, not 15,000 like its siblings. Okay, insurance. And here is a surprise. The hybrid is actually dearer to insure than both the petrol and the diesel. Not a good result for the hybrid. So when we run that all out over one full year of ownership, we end up with $3,814 to own the Elite Hybrid, $4,900 to run the petrol, and $3,904 to run the diesel. So there you go. It is a whopping $1,100 cheaper than its petrol equivalent, but it is only $90 cheaper than the diesel equivalent. What does that mean? That means if you were looking at the petrol and you buy the hybrid, you will make your money back in just over 6 years. Not a bad result as long as you're going to hang on to the car for that long. But, and here's the problem, if you were looking at the diesel instead, it's going to take almost 34 years for you to make your money back. Who has a car for that long? But still, hey, maybe you're buying the hybrid for reasons other than economy. Maybe you're doing it to save the planet, in which case, more credit to you. So there you have it. Those are the numbers, and you can't argue against numbers. They're on the page for all to see. And now you know, you have all the facts. So when you're deciding which one to buy, use those facts to your advantage. If you'd like to know more about the Hyundai Santa Fe range or read reviews of its rivals or indeed any new car, go to Drive.com.au. And before you leave, do me a favour and like this video so my boss knows I'm doing a good job, and subscribe to Drive so when Drive drives new cars, you hear about it first.